Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And with this one, I will be bringing you my Dragonflight top 10 arena comps. It is in the 3v3 arena bracket that you will only be able to acquire the coveted Gladiator title and Gladiator mount, which looks freaking awesome in this expansion. I have not wanted a Gladiator mount as badly as I've wanted the Gladiator mount in Dragonflight. So definitely important to start thinking about what are going to be classes that can get us there, what combinations of these classes can get us there, because so much has changed in Dragonflight. Dampening is starting faster, it's ramping faster, which means a lot of specs that used to kind of suffer because they couldn't get to the dampening point might be a lot more powerful. You have to take that into consideration. We've also got a new class. How is the synergies of that going to be working interlocked with other classes and combinations? We have ongoing balance changes to take into consideration, to which, if you want to stay up to date with everything related to World of Warcraft news, then do make sure to hit the subscribe button, and your support is greatly appreciated on my journey of getting to 100,000 subscribers and eventually being able to hang the plaque on my wall so it's not just blank and empty like my soul. But without further ado, let's get started with the top 10 arena compositions with Dragonflight, with everything that I have mentioned in mind. Coming in the 10 position, it might be a bit of a surprise for everybody, is actually the Balanced Druid Warlock Preservation Evoker. I have Demonology and Affliction kind of interchangeable. They both bring pros and cons. Demonology is going to be more burst oriented. Having Mortal Wounds is super nice. Having the extra stuns is going to be very important. But Affliction damage and Boomkin damage is very heavy. Like, you can do a ton of AoE damage with this damage profile. And I've got Preservation Evoker because this healer is going to be one that allows you to move the Warlock around, move the Moonkin around the map, and be more freely able to heal, and also add in a lot of extra damage with the Fire Breath being direct and damage over time effect. Preservation does huge amounts of damage, huge amounts of healing. Definitely, the most powerful healer. I think a lot of people would agree at the moment. So I think it would be best suited for this composition. Just dot and rot, do as much damage as you physically can. And this could be a really scary one, but even this one's only coming in the number 10 position. It already sounds so formidable. So moving into the number 9 position is RMP. I couldn't leave it out. This most recent round of changes saw a lot of buffs to Rogue, making them a lot tankier than they were previously, with buffs to the Recuperator, a lot of damage buffs as well towards things like Echoing Reprimand, which were really burst heavy. I do think that this could be the season for Arcane RMP to start dominating the scene. I've got listed as Assassination. Arcane Holy Priest is the best version. Arcane with Dragon's Breath means that you can kidney shot one target, chastise one target, Dragon's Breath sheep another target, 3 CCs, lots of burst damage. All right, survivability, definitely not the best, which is why I'm honestly putting it a little bit lower on the list overall. I think there's other compositions that are way more durable right now that might be able to overrun RMP. I think Subtlety is likely interchangeable with Assassination after the most recent changes, but I'm still a little bit hesitant to say 100% on Subtlety actually being competitive with Assassination because it's still so early on those changes. I think Preservation Evoker could be a fun healer to pick up in RMP if you're really thinking about trying something out. Again, it's going to bring in Sleepwalk, so he can sleepwalk a target, DB sheep a target, kidney shot a target, and it also brings the Oppressing Roar, which increases CC on the target in PvP only by 20%, but 20% longer on a kidney shot is still a really long kidney shot, and it can dump these fire breaths every time you're sending a go and get a massive hit from the healer like you would a Holy Priest. So I think it could be fun, likely not better just because Chastise is instant cast, but I wanted to throw it in there, and I don't think you could leave RMP off a list. This thing is like a cockroach. It doesn't matter how bad everybody's thinking it is, it's probably going to be in there, but even RMP is coming in towards the bottom of my list. Number 8 position, completely new composition. I wanted to include Devastation Evoker on this list, although I'm not sure how well it'll be going in the ranked 3v3 bracket. Do note this is actual Dragonflight based on Dragonflight beta, not pre-patch, where in solo queue the Devastation Evokers are one-shotting people. They still one-shot people in 3v3, and I think it'll be important to coordinate yourself with a caster that brings a lot of instant cast crowd control, so you can coordinate your massive, insane burst damage. So a Shadow Priest is really good at that. They can stun silence a healer while you're sending your Deep Breath, Dragon's Rage, one-shot Fire Breath on somebody else with Mind Games and Psyfiend. Kind of playing like the old school Shatter play, right? Like a Mage and a Shadow Priest would have played in the past. So I think that same type of idea could work here. Sleepwalk, similar to Polymorph type of deal. Thought this might be one of the best for them. Now, of course, melee DPS like Demon Hunter are also really strong right now, could definitely be a viable option, but this one in well-coordinated hands I think could be really deadly. I've got Mistweaver as the healer for this composition because it's just the most throughput, but you could easily run Preservation Evoker and run 2 Evokers. I actually almost somewhat think that triple Evoker could be a thing. And I've got Resto Shaman here. Even though Resto Shaman I would debate is kind of the worst healer, the synergies with Shadow Priest and protecting the Shadow Priest with double Earthen Wall Totem that you can get now could likely still be a really important synergy to take into account. So I just wanted to leave it there. But I thought this would be a really fun one. Really good to coordinate, bringing back some of that old school flavor of the Mage Shadow Priest, but now it's an Evoker instead, because I think the Evoker is doing a lot more lower cooldown burst, and it's going to be able to avoid damage a bit easier than the other Mage specializations currently. But Shadow is a monster, so like you could pretty much play anything with a Shadow Priest. This one seemed like a really fun one and a good one to check out. It's coming in at number 8 though, so now we're in number 7. We're not even halfway through the list. We got Kitty Cleave, Fury Warriors, monsters similar to Demon Hunters. I think one thing about Fury Warrior is losing Safeguard on their Intervene means that playing with like Ret Paladins might not be as good as it was in Shadowlands or even things like Enhancement Shaman. I think Feral Druid's more durable than those options, which is why Kitty Cleave took this spot on the list over those other compositions. I think bringing a Disc Priest that just brings a lot of sustained and consistent damage means that you're just going to be overrunning a target, trying to be as durable as possible, but you could easily bring in a Preservation Evoker or a Mistweaver for throughput. You're going to get more damage from the Evoker than the Mistweaver. Mistweaver would be a really safe kind of just healer sit in the back, but I think Disc Priest is likely going to be the dominant healer for this composition. Number 6 position, Windwalker DK. This is one spot where I think Frost Death Knight is actually going to get to shine a lot, and I think you're going to particularly want a Preservation Evoker. The main reason for this comp being so good is that Preservation Evokers have a talent called Swoop, which allows them to pick up a target and move them. So you can move the third target that's standing out of range of the Death Grip. Death Knight Death Grips one, Evoker moves the other one with Swoop, stack them all up, triple leg sweep, massive frost damage AoE, massive preservation AoE, massive Windwalker AoE. They're all knocked over. See you later. Next game, queue up. This could be a really nasty composition to take into consideration with some maybe otherwise sleeper specializations. Number 5 position is going to be going to Jungle Cleave. Feral Druid is just such a strong spec right now, and although Hunter I think is likely going to be a struggle bus in solo queue, I think with a coordinated team and crowd control and the amount of momentum that you can build up with this composition historically and still carrying forward into this next expansion, that it's still going to be a beast in the 3v3 arena. I think Beast Mastery or Survival are likely interchangeable. I'm not 100% certain on the healer for this one, whether or not it'll be Holy Priest or Disc. Disc would be more sustained damage. Holy Priest gets you better triple setups. So there's trade-offs there if you want to be more about control. I think Feral's likely going to be more about damage, so maybe Disc might slip in ahead, but Jungle is not going anywhere. It's coming in at the halfway mark here on this top 10 arena list. Now moving into the number 4, we've got WWDK. Did you think this one was going anywhere? This was one that was at the top of the ladder towards the end of Shadowlands, and I think that it is still going to be a monster moving into Dragonflight now. Unholy DK, just insane burst damage now with the Gargoyle added into your build with your Abomination's Limb during the Demonic Tyrant of your Warlock, gripping people, free casting, blasting them down. You can bring in a Preservation Evoker to add even more AoE to that Cleave mess, and you can bring in a Mistweaver Monk just for safety, maximum throughput, sit in the back healing. I think Mistweaver likely, I don't know if it'll be better than Preservation. It really depends on the viability of Affliction, because Mistweaver acts as almost a direct counter to Affliction Warlock. And if we do see a lot of it, maybe Mistweaver will actually be better, but I would honestly in this position rather bring the Evoker for damage. I think just having that overwhelming AoE gripping pressure with Mortal Wounds from the Demo Lock and Fire Breath coming in would just be absolutely nasty for this composition. Number 4, coming in at number 3, we've got DH Warlock. This is one that's really powerful at the moment in the pre-patch, and I think that is likely still going to continue to remain true into the actual expansion of Dragonflight. Affliction damage is very high. Bring in a Preservation Evoker to give them mobility and add an extra damage as well. That's going to be a really good synergy. And then Demon Hunter is just Havoc Demon Hunter. They do monstrous amounts of damage, borderline invincible. Basically the same level of strength as what we were seeing the Arms Warrior in Shadowlands Season 1. So this is a dominating spec. You don't want to forget about it. It probably can play with anything, but this one was definitely standing out, and I think that it wouldn't be a good top 10 if I didn't include it somewhere, but it's actually only coming in at number 3. Moving into number 2 position is actually Demon Hunter DK. So the main reason again for this is it's similar to the Windwalker DK, but I think Demon Hunters just do way more damage and, you know, way less of a liability to have them die off. They bring AoE stuns. They have even more CC with Fear. So Preservation Evoker swoops a target in, Death Knight grips a target in. Could run Unholy or Frost here. I think Unholy would be better with the Demon Hunter because they're more sustain oriented, but Frost could definitely work. I've got Resto Druid as kind of an extra option with Ursul's Vortex, but Resto Druid is kind of maybe running second fiddle at the moment to Preservation and Mistweaver just for the time being. I think its mana is going to be a really big problem, as other healers do not run out of mana nearly as quickly as Resto Druid, but I kept it here just, you know, Resto Druid's keeping some faith up, but this composition will be gnarly. I think that the Warlock Demon Hunter, the Warlocks will have a hard time with this specifically, and it could be a meat grinder. The other main reason for that is, you know, Ret Warrior might not be as much of a problem as it was previously. That kept this composition kind of down in the dumps, so it could be a lot better, and it's kind of like an anti-wizard. Now moving into the number 1 position. What's my number 1 composition for Shadowlands? Well, what do you know? It's the Shadow Priest Warlock. Now, this could be maybe somewhat interchangeable with the DHDK, but I think that you actually can kill DHDK with this composition due to Psi-Fiend and Mind Games. I think you can run Affliction or Demonology, depends on playstyle. Also may depend on the pacing of the game. With Dampening starting faster, I think Affliction is honestly a little bit better and more competitive. And we could see that just alluding to it even at the end of Season 4 in Shadowlands when Affliction wasn't necessarily like this bonker spec as it is now. So you could overwhelm with massive damage over time effects, UA dispels on covering your silences and your stuns, Mind Games, lots of different builds to try with this. Shadow Priest has burst on a much lower cooldown. It's going to be really good. Bring in a Preservation Evoker, you're adding even more damage. You can rescue your casters, bring them into better positions. It's going to be really tough to catch them. You can landslide root targets to prevent these melee attackers from getting to your deep range DPS. You could bring in Mistweaver again for safe throughput. Still depends on what I think is going on with Affliction as to whether or not Mistweaver will have a spot. And then Resto Druid, you could do it, but you're probably going to run out of mana. It could be a bit of a rough ride, but I think this comp could be really nasty. It's particularly Shadow Priests, Demon Hunters, and Warlocks that you really want to be keeping an eye on, and different combinations of them. Those are likely going to be the dominating factors with the upheaval we've seen with Ret Paladins and Warriors and that type of deal, but isn't to say that they can't compete. This is just my initial thoughts on my assessments of what the beta has shown me so far, what I've seen for performances based on classes, and kind of my prediction as to what it will be like at the start of Season 1 in Dragonflight. So if you agree with me, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts if there's something that I forgot. There are some specs that could be sleeper OP, and I'll be making videos on those. So if you want to see that, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.